Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can we settle down so that we can start? So I hope most of you have also switched tables so that you are able to engage with the other countries and experts from different areas. So just to recap, yesterday was a long day, and we covered quite a bit of ground. So we got an overview of the climate finance landscape and the issues that the region in particular and the world faces. And we started with Mr. Wan, who explained that despite challenges, Sri Lanka is still committed to climate change. It's updating its national climate change policy. We heard Mr. Packer about how the world is coming together, how the ministries of finance are coming together to take forward the agenda of climate change, and which was then followed up by Dr. Salimul Haq, who said that given the massive destruction which is happening, it's important that not only adaptation and mitigation is taken into account, but the loss and damage should also be taken into account. And that's something which resonated during the day in subsequent presentations as well. We heard from UNESCAP about the debt swaps, and that while it's something for the countries to consider, but may not be appropriate for every country. And then we heard the example of Cambodia on how it has used its production model to look at the different types of impact that climate change can have on the economy. And then Professor Matthew explained that how capital assets should be taken into consideration in a sustainable way, and the risk metrics should be looking forward. And then we heard from our IMF colleagues, from UNDP colleagues about the macroeconomic forecasting and the need for financing frameworks to support sustainable climate change investments, and how green PFM can help. We also heard about the different tools. And then, more importantly, we heard from Bangladesh about the application of some of these tools, and then Philippines' efforts for interagency collaboration and exploring different options. And then we also heard from UNCDF about how finance can be mobilized at the subnational level. And towards the end of the day, we heard about the fiscal and tax policies for green transition. So World Bank shared its experience in Vietnam, and how human and social capital considerations should also be taken into account. From IEA, we heard about how carbon pricing can trigger various investment and operational changes, and then the role of carbon pricing in energy transition. And then we heard about China's experience on low carbon transition, and from India about the production, transmission, and consumer aspects about the subsidy reforms. So in a nutshell, we covered quite a bit on the public finance angle, the macroeconomic angle. So today we will be looking at how resources can be mobilized through international resources, plus how can we use some of the innovative financing instruments. And the session that we have immediately in the beginning of the day will actually dilate upon that. And then the equity angles. So how do we take into consideration the equity angle that is becoming a very important and hot topic amongst the climate change practitioners. So I'll now pass it over to Ching for her session, and thank you very much for coming again.
Thank you very much, Assad. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I first invite all the speakers for the first session of the day to come to the stage, please. Mr. Rico Zhang, Mr. Paru Bhattacharyan, Ibu Duri, and also Ms. Shuhat. Please come to the stage. Thank you very much. Be seated in the, yes. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you have got some very good rest last night, because I know yesterday's discussion was quite rich, and I really hope that today, this morning, you have bring you a very fresh mind and ready for absorb new information and will be inspired by our joint discussion. My name is Qing Xu. I am the Regional Climate and Innovative Finance Specialist of UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub. I will be the moderator of the first session of Day 2's discussion. So for this session, we will focus on the how to inform opportunity and also categorize private sector finance to support climate change agenda. So today we are very honored to have 5 speakers to join us. First, I would like to greet them first. We have Ms. Duri Iranti Hadininia, the Director of Islamic Finance, Directorate General of Budget Financing and Risk Management from Ministry of Finance of Indonesia. Welcome, Ibu Duri. We have Mr. Paru Bhattacharyan, Senior Expert on Bond Market Development, Public Debt Management Office from Ministry of Finance, Thailand. Welcome. We have Mr. Shuhat Ibrahim, Policy and Research Advisor, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Environment Development of Maldives. Morning. We have Mr. Rico Zhang, Senior Director of International Capital Market Association in Asia Pacific. Welcome, Rico. And today we have one speaker join us online, Mr. Ronald Yang, the Director of Sustainable Finance and Impact Structuring from Societe Generale in Asia Pacific. Welcome, Ronald. I hope you can hear us clearly and loudly. We cannot hear Raymond, but I hope that our IT colleague will solve the issue very shortly. So before our session, I want to reflect something at the beginning. So we have all known that to close the climate finance gap of $1 trillion, we cannot just rely on the traditional financial resources and approaches like ODA or public expenditure at both international global level and domestic and local level. So we need innovative finance approach. So today we will bring different market practices and also different angle about how to leverage innovative finance instrument, policy, and business model to achieve the sustainable and climate goals. So first, capital market, bond, debts, and equity market have massive role to play in helping the world to achieve its net zero goals, because the influence and reach of capital markets, operators and regulators are so broad. So in last quarter in 2021, the value of international debt capital market transaction has reached over $1.1 trillion. So we see the scale. So how to mobilize capital market both globally and domestically and make it efficient, transparent, and also standardized are very critical to let us engage more private sector finance, institutional investor to support climate agenda. So first, I would like to go to Mr. Rico Zhang. Rico is responsible for International Capital Market Associate, or ICMA's development in Greater China area, and works closely with regulator, financial institution, and other organizations to promote and maintain the best market practices. So he will share with us a full landscape of global and regional capital market in supporting green and sustainable development. So welcome, Rico, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can IT colleagues share my PPT? Yes, here you go. Good morning, everyone. It's very good to be here, and just a lovely morning in Thailand. And I want to share with you about ICMA work in the climate change, and more importantly, in the sustainable bond market. As you know, ICMA is the basically the international organization for the bond market. Next slide, please. So we have, if you don't mind, I just stand here. Basically, I walk you through for those who are not familiar with ICMA. So we are a bond market association for the international offshore US dollar market. We have been in the market to set such standards for over 50 years. So the three core areas of ICMA world, they are primary market, secondary market, and ripple market. And there are two important initiatives that we've been working very extensively, which are, one is sustainable finance, the other is the fintech. Then basically for probably for attendees today, if you from different market walk stream, you may be familiar with ICMA by our primary market handbook, or maybe GMRA, the Global Master Repo Agreement, or more importantly to the topic today, the green bond principles and other principles for the sustainable bond market. Next slide, please. So just really quickly to walk you through about the history of our standards. So as you know, first in 2007, you probably know that there are a couple of climate-themed bonds, including officially a green bond issued by EIB. So this market, it really launched, but the volume is very low. Then until 2014, the first version of Green Bond Principles was released by ICMA. Basically, we set the scene that such bonds, different from the vanilla bonds, is use of proceeds bond, meaning usually vanilla bonds or all bonds, basically it just for general corporate use. But for such a specific green, social sustainability we've seen today, they basically regulate you to specific projects, meaning 100% of such proceeds should go to those projects. And in 2017, we launched the social bond principles, which mirror the green bond principles with the social characteristics. And in the meantime, because there's always a mix of green and social, so we also released the sustainability bond guidelines. Then pushed to the during the pandemic, there are two important standards we have released. One is the sustainability linked bond to really address the climate change and the transition. This is basically the most recent products we introduced to the market. The other is climate transition finance handbook, because now transition is really something we should consider, particularly for those hard to abate sectors. So for those non-qualified green bond issuers, maybe sustainability linked bonds and also transition labeling is something they should consider. Next. So we now have 4 products. 3 of them are use of proceeds concept. So green social sustainability, they basically different principles and like four components with two key recommendations. The other is a simple link bond. This is not a user proceed bond. This basically link a coupon rate to certain performance of the issuers, and you basically you're allowed to use such proceeds freely. Then, as I mentioned, the climate transition finance is very important now. Actually, we have a lot of debate about how to account for transition. And we have seen transition bonds in the market issued already. But overall, from ICMA's position, transition is a thematic labeling rather than a product. We basically don't develop another asset class. The transition labeling is on the issues. So you can tell the transition actually is from, for example, like a point 1 to point B. It's about the pathway. It's about the trajectory. So you basically need to show your strategy, your commitment, and how you achieve from point A to point B. So this actually is happening at the issue level rather than you put your money into certain projects that make such transition. So this is the consensus of ICMA community, which basically sets out the scene. This is not a product to solve the transition challenges. Rather, it's basically the task for the issuers to a commitment for such climate change. Next. So this is basically because in this year the market is evolving and developing very, very quickly. So just not to give you some controversial sort of like data, I just show you the very straightforward over the last few years. So you can tell first, the overall the sustainable bond market is growing very, very quickly. Second, the green bond actually is still the mainstream. Even we have now 4 products, green bond almost like 50% of the market size. Then social bond, sustainability bonds probably 20% respectively. And the last, the sustainability link bond, the newest product, which accounts for like 10%. So this is overall the landscape of the sustainable bond market over the last few years. And in 2014, you can see, this is really the launch year for the green bond. Then 2017, we have seen the social and the sustainability bonds just growing. In 2020, you probably note that the social bond and the sustainability bonds growing substantially. So partly thanks to the COVID pandemic, basically we have a lot of financing activities targeted to such pandemic and how to fight the COVID. So we have seen the social bonds really growing, and this actually is good because overall, as you know, the ESG, in a lot of countries we're talking about environment all the time, but as the social is always missing. So now the new normal, social bonds actually has become a more like a mainstream in the sustainable bond market. So this is very encouraging. And one important point I want to emphasize is to address the transition challenge, to address the climate change. Social actually is very, it's something very, very important. And we have seen not just as a social bond, even the sustainability linked bond. It's not necessarily linked to the environmental targets. It's we have seen SLB linked to the social performance. They set the social performance target. So this is also, very diversified and useful for the market to basically widen the spectrum and also consider different aspects into your performance when you issue the sustainability linked bond. Next. So for the use of proceeds bond, I just, probably a lot of you are familiar with our principles. Just to recap, 4 core areas. First, you need to define obviously like a green, social, what kind of like a projects you are using such proceeds for. Secondly, you need to have an evaluation and a selection system to pick up those right projects. Third is how you manage such proceeds and to track, to make sure 100% of the such proceeds will go to those projects. Last but not least, the disclosure. You need to disclose all such information to your investors. Two key recommendations. So in practice, they almost the fifth and the sixth components or principles to such green, social, relevant principles. But why we name it key recommendation? There's a because if we put into at the principle level, while facing, for example, like a grandfathering challenges, and also certain jurisdictions, they may even have some legal liability. So for now, we keep it as recommendation. However, we just make it a stronger, basically, to make it like key recommendation. So in practice, most issuers will follow still the 6 requirements. So the key recommendation bond framework, which was new, released last year, I think. So maybe you disclose how you allocate such proceeds and how you use such proceeds to enhance your green and the social performance. Maybe it's not good enough. So you should disclose the wider framework at the issuer level, how you're going to use such like a bond proceeds and how you commit to such climate change. Second, external reviews, because we all know the external reviews actually is very important to endorse such bonds and to give the face of the market. So investor will very much rely on such external reviewers to give such a second opinion or even third certification to basically give the confidence to the market about the integrity. Next. So those are, quickly the categories of green bond projects, from renewable energy down to the green buildings. So it's very diversified and sophisticated now. So, for example, renewable energy this used to be, the largest pie in the whole green categories. But as you know, in certain jurisdictions, for example, like Hong Kong, where I'm based, green buildings actually took a lot of advantage, and a lot of issuers actually, when they issue green bonds, they are real asset sector, and green buildings actually the projects they considered when they tap the green bond market. Next. Then social, I think in Asia, particularly in this region, I think we usually find it challenging. One reason is we maybe cannot first understand fully about what kind of like a social project would be, and also how use the bond market to finance such social projects. They can be profitable, they can be sustainable, financially sustainable. So again, investors will always look at the coupon, look at the revenues, right? So we're not talking about the charity. Such social projects actually are profitable as well. And I just list out those, the social projects from like affordable basic infrastructures to down to the food securities, etc. Then one difference from green bonds is there's always a target population. This is very important concept, because for the green, it's basically for the general public interest. But for social bonds, you always can basically link them to the specific group of people. So basically, this gives you some example how to mapping with each other, and fundamentally, this is to solve the social problem with certain group of population. So that's the big difference from the green bond. Next. So again, use of proceeds, there's the sustainability bonds actually is the mix of green and social. To clarify, this can be two ways. One is if you, for example, you build up say like a hospital for the local community, this can be a social bond. Meanwhile, this building is, green building. So this is a green social characters combined. This is sustainability bonds. In the meantime, if you issue a sustainability bond, you allocate certain proceeds to green projects and others to the social projects. That's a sustainability bond as well. So it's not required like always an overlap of green and social. As long as you allocate proceeds to 100% to either green or social, you have such mixed concept in your, the specific bond tranche. This actually is sustainability bond. Next. So the new products released in 2020, this is a sustainability linked bond. The beauty is you don't have to, allocate such proceeds to specific projects and attract money, etc. So it's basically very different from our use of proceeds bond. It also have like 5 components. One is you set the KPI. The KPI actually to make sure that your business model always link to such climate change commitment you made. So this actually sets such KPIs and lets the investor know actually what kind of transition targets you have set and how you do such way to meet such objective. Second is SPT, the sustainability performance target. As I said, the sustainability performance target not necessarily should be environmental. It can be social as well. Then it has the bond characters. Obviously, you need to pay the coupon rate. But obviously, it's a little bit, structural, as I said. So the flat coupon, you